Welcome to another episode of CENJOWS podcast series. The topic for today's discussion is space-based ISR. And to discuss on this crucial and need of the hour topic, we have the honor of hosting Air Marshal Anil Khosla, Param Visist Seva Medal, Ati Visist Seva Medal, Vayu Seva Medal, retired. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much, Vinay.
And before we proceed with the discussion, I would like to take an opportunity to introduce our guest. Air Marshal Anil Khosla, PVSM, AVSM, PM, retired, is a distinguished Indian Air Force veteran who served as Vice Chief of Air Staff. He was commissioned into the fighter stream on December 14, 1979, and concluded an illustrious military career upon his retirement on April 30, 2019. An alumnus of National Defense Academy and a postgraduate from Defense Services Staff College, he consistently demonstrated academic excellence by standing first in order of merit in all courses he attended, including the flying instructor, fighter strike leaders, and higher command courses. His exceptional service was recognized with 3 presidential awards: Param Visist Seva Medal, Ati Visist Seva Medal, and Vayu Sena Medal. Throughout his tenure, Air Marshal Khosla held a series of critical leadership appointments across all IAF operational commands. These included serving as Air Officer Commanding-in-Chief of Eastern Air Command, Director General Air Operations, and Senior Air Staff Officer of Central Air Command. He also held dual roles of AOC Jammu and Kashmir alongside Army and AOC Maritime Air Operations alongside the Navy, following successful command of major operational bases in Ambala and Jaisalmer. Notably, he played a pivotal role in the Doklam operations and Balakot strike and was central to formulating Air Force war plans, force structure planning, and capability building. A highly skilled aviator, he is a A2 category flying instructor and fighter strike leader with over 4,000 hours of accident-free flying experience on various aircrafts, including Jaguar and MiG-21. Since his retirement, he has remained a prominent strategic thinker, currently serving as subject matter expert in Center for Joint Warfare Studies and a distinguished fellow at institutions such as the United Service Institute and the Center for Air Power Studies. Air Marshal Khosla is an expert voice on wide range of modern strategic challenges, writing extensively on nuances of Chinese strategic thoughts, military modernization, and gray zone operations. His specialized analysis covers evolution of air power in multi-domain warfare, emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and hypersonic weapons, and the strategic significance of space and cyber domains. Beyond military strategy, he also frequently addresses themes of leadership, growth mindset, and organizational culture. In his personal time, he is a keen golfer and a competitive puzzle solver, having represented India at the international level in Sudoku and puzzle solving championships. So once again, on behalf of CENJOWS, I extend my heartfelt thank you for taking time off your busiest schedule and for agreeing to share your thoughts on such crucial topic.
And thank you very much, Vinayak. It's a pleasure talking to you, and always doing a pleasure, interacting with CENJOWS. And thank you very much for getting me on this platform to share my views on a very, very important subject, as you said. Although you have mentioned, space-based ISR, but I will go into a slightly broader term of space operations, because without going into it, space-based ISR will not be complete. So let's start with your.
Yes, sir, definitely. Space-based ISR is such an umbrella term. It has so many aspects interlinked to it. So without touching upon those, I don't think it makes more sense. So feel free to include anything that you feel would enrich our audience. Sir, to start with, we know this, people talk about sensor to shooter links, and they consider this as the holy grail of modern warfare. But when it comes to high intensity conflicts, one can say that clock remains our biggest enemy. Like, for example, let's say there is a satellite and it tracks the movement of some adversary vehicles or some foreign body, vehicles along our sensitive borders. To transmit that data to our command theater, it takes some time. The time is so long that within that time frame, these vehicles might change their position or camouflage themselves. And you have been in cockpit yourself. So from your point of view, how do you think that we can reduce this time frame so that whatever the satellites grasp will be immediately sent, and that in seconds rather than in minutes or hours, so that the efficiency does not get compromised?
Yeah, so Vinayak, you're talking about compressing of the sensor to shooter timeline. And
Yes.
You mentioned, holy grail of modern warfare. Here I will try to correct it a bit. It's not been modern warfare only, it's been over the years. This sensor to shooter timeline reduction has been felt as a necessity in the warfare. If you remember Colonel John Boyd, his UDA cycle, observe, orientate, and decide and act. That is basically what you're talking about shooter to sensor this thing. So that has been in vogue for quite some time, and over the years, as the warfare has evolved, as the technology has evolved, the various methods have been employed to reduce this timeline. Before coming to the space, I'll just go over, for example, the weaponization of the platform itself, airborne. I'll talk about air warfare, your AVAX or airborne platform or maritime recce aircraft, armed with anti-ship missile, or the AVAX armed with the air-to-air missile. That means you're putting the shooter along with the sensor to reduce the timeline. Okay, and then later on, the concept of time-sensitive targeting and target of opportunity came up. Like America does, eliminates the head of terrorist organizations, where they just intelligence tells them they're moving from here to there. So those targets are very, very target of opportunity and target time sensitive. So for the, making sure that you are able to neutralize those, the concept of having the platforms ready airborne started. Then came the networking. Now, when the networking came, all the sensors and shooters and decision makers became one composite unit, multiple of them. Now, in this gambit, when the space has come in now, the space-based sensors and weaponization of space is also taking place, the whole envelope has increased. So now the question is, how do we reduce the shooter to sensor with the space-based surveillance fitting into the whole gambit which I explained? So now what happens is, the technology is moving way ahead of humans. So technology at the moment can contribute a lot towards this cause of reducing the timeline. What it can do is, you can have satellites with the AI-based satellites who can not only detect, classify, and also cue the target. That means cue the weapon onto the target. It can do all that. You can have satellites which are pre-authorized by the human. Pre-authorized means it has the authority to initiate the strike, initiate the weapon to fire. Okay, it can trigger the strike and not consult back and forth, wasting time. So that's how you can reduce the sensor to shooter timing. Third thing it can do is, it can direct machine to machine conduit. That means it can have a network connectivity. It can give the technology so that the time reduces. So the ISR platform, the strike platform, the weapons, and the decision maker all can be, can consult each other in a very, very fast way. So technology is ready. Technology can do all that. But the question is much more than this. The question is, technology, although can automate the decision support, it can automate the kill chain. But would the humans like to do that? There are considerations and concerns about legal, strategic, and ethical aspects. Legal in the sense, if there is a failure and something else gets shot instead of what you intend, then who's responsible? Is the person, is the human being, or the person who's written the algorithm, or the person who made the satellite? I mean, who's responsible for it? Strategic. You may be taking some action to do political signaling or strategic coercion, but the satellite may take it as a clearance to go offensive, and he goes and hits something, and your outcome may be totally different from what you want actually. So those concerns, ethical concerns, you are putting the human life, even in the enemy, at least it's a human life in a machine's hand. Is it ethical enough? So these concerns are still, in a very, very nascent stage, and a lot of work is going on. So far, the human has to be in the loop, and that is where we are at the moment. We are not ready to give the authority to the machines. So that is this thing. So as far as technology is concerned, we can reduce the time quite a bit, but we are not ready to give this thing. So it's an architectural issue. It's a decision-making issue, which takes a little bit of time. So what we need to do is that we have doctrinal willingness to pre-delegate authority is not there at the moment. So we have to live with the whatever time frames we have been able to compress so far in this warfare. Yeah, Vinayak.
Yes, sir. Like you have rightfully brought out, like human will always remain an important factor, and keeping human in the loop is very important. And over reliance on technology can have its own side effects. So
Correct.
thank you for bringing out that, and you have beautifully explained technological and ethical factors that creates this responsibility dilemma.
Yeah.
Sir, but we talk about technology and advancements in technology. Previously, the fight was mostly kinetic. But now what has happened is as the technology has advanced, it is moving more towards the electronic domain
Yeah.
where the adversaries are improving their capabilities as well as capacities in the electronic domain. Like let's say that if they manage to jam our GPS signal or spoof our satellites, then entire network that is dependent on those critical satellites will get hampered, and we can easily say that we become blind when it comes to that. So it will also have an impact on our precision guided munitions as well, because they are linked. So how do you think that we should fight this electronic fog that it is increasing day by day, but also not compromise our kinetic abilities? Because as I said already, and as you mentioned, since humans will always be in the loop, that kinetic factor cannot be ignored. So over reliance on technology, we should not just let go of the kinetic factor as well. So how do you think we strike a balance and do our best?
Yeah. And Vinayak, you talked about electronic fog of war.
Yes, sir.
And this term has emerged from the term fog of war. As they say, when the first shot is fired, the first casualty is the truth. That is what is fog of war. So you don't know what is the truth, what is the false this thing narrative, or what is this thing. So we have to operate within that fog of war. Now the electronic war, fog of war is also an interesting concept. It's a part of the fog of war. And if the recent wars, if you see all of them, you see the ongoing Iran war, you see the Ukraine war, you see whatever wars are taking place in the recent. First shot is not fired in the kinetic domain. Kinetic domain, I mean the actual weapons. First shot is always fired by the non-kinetic means, that is the cyber warfare, electronic warfare, through the medium space or whatever mediums, information warfare. These are all called disruptive technologies, and the idea is to create a situation where there is chaos is prevailing in the enemy camp, and things are disrupted. And in this chaotic situation, now the kinetic weapons are employed. So if you see all the war, this is a trend which is taking place and going to continue also, and for obvious reasons. So jamming and spoofing of ISR and GPS and all, baseline assumption that will be done. I mean, you have to live with it. You have to mitigate it. You have to find means of operating within that domain, within that situation, those circumstances. So actually, if you see over the years, this non-kinetic warfare which we talk about, electronic warfare, cyber warfare, it's a game of spy versus spy. The new offensive methods keep coming, new defensive methods keep coming, and it's a continuous process. It keeps evolving. And not only during war, if you remember, Myanmar, our Indian Air Force aircraft had gone for relief operations, and they encountered GPS spoofing. So what I'm bringing out is not only in war, in no war, no peace, in gray zone operations also you might encounter these this thing, because there is a sense of deniability by the person who is resorting to it, and you may face it not only during war, even in the non-war time also you may face these things. Now the important question is, you said, how do we operate within this fog of electronic warfare? How do we mitigate the effects? So I feel that I divide it into four parts, or you can say 4 methods, or you can call it 4-tier approach. Okay, first one I call it as platform centric. The platforms which are operating, and I also call it the concept of redundancy. Okay, why I call this is, you have these platforms, whatever. I mean, when I say platform, it could be airborne platform, ground-based platforms, it may be satellite, space-based platforms, all sort of platforms which are involved in the war I'm talking about. It's a very generic term I'm using. So you have multiple and independent guidance nodes in the whole architecture of the warfare. That is one way of doing it. Second is multiple nav systems you have. You have inertial nav, you have GPS, you have terrain following, you have optical, and these are the modern systems which are coming up are like that, with multiple nav systems amalgamated into one with Kalman filtering, and also giving weightage to which system is operating better, which system is degraded. All those is happening with the advancement of technology. Then you have, as far as space is concerned, you have constellation. I'll come to space again back. So in future, you're going to have quantum nav and guidance system. So this is why I'm sort of talking about redundancy in the platform-centric approach. That means you harden the platforms to deal with this situation. Now coming to the space segment, the second, that is hardening of the space segment. So as I said, one is you have multiple constellations. Okay, then you have anomaly detection systems in the satellite. That means if the GPS has been degraded, you should be able to compare it with others and know that you have been degraded. Because unless spoofing is effective. Unless you know, then only you can take the corrective action. Then you need to harden your electronics which are on board these satellites and these platforms. Then you need to have spoofing protection. There are various means of doing that. Then you need to have frequency agility. So these are various methods which are, I will not go into details of this thing. So idea is to operate within this degraded, firstly identify the degradation, and then ability to operate within that. Relying less on radio frequencies, more on optical, because optical is more difficult to jam. That work is also going on. The third tier or the third level, I call it operational level. That means human being, this thing, or human and concepts. So what happens is your planning, the dynamic planning which you do in war should be able to, it should be adaptable and resilient, in the sense that it should be able to operate with irregular and incomplete data flow. Because irregular and incomplete data will be there. You will not get 100% picture. Only God can get the God's eye view. You may have God's eye view through the space, but you will not have the 100% picture. So your planning process should be resilient enough, adaptable enough to deal with it. Training of the human beings, the operators, the people who orchestrate the war is very, very important. First to identify, then, in 2024, we had an exercise called Antriksh Abhyas, if you remember. So this was exercise was a 3-day exercise done by the military, Army, Navy, Air Force, ISRO, and DRDO. So very, very good exercise, and this is what I'm talking about. So the whole idea of the exercise, they had tabletop, war games, discussions, simulations. They identify what are the vulnerabilities, what are the challenges, and also how to coordinate between inter-service. So this was very, very important exercise, and that is what I'm talking about. We need to train ourselves. And third, the fourth tier which I'm talking about is institutional or regulatory. In India also, now we are talking about space situational awareness, SSA. So India is in the process of drafting this policy, and the policy draft has been made, it's been circulated for industry feedback. And it is very, very important because it deals with a whole lot of issues. The platforms which are flying in the space, the satellite, the debris, and the other objects, how to avoid disaster, how to regulate them, how to deal with them, how to increase the situational awareness. It's a full-fledged policy, so that is institutional. So this is how, these are the 3 or 4 methods which I outlined in a brief, very brief. Actually, it's in a topic itself for a full-fledged discussion. We will not go into it into technical details, but these are the verticals we need to work on to operate within the electrical fog which you talked about. Electrical fog, as I said, or the fog cannot be eliminated. Only thing is, idea is to remain functional within it.
Definitely, sir. I completely agree with you because let's get real that we can't avoid it.
Yeah.
Countries are advancing so much and the technology is advancing so much that we have to somehow learn to deal with it. And very recently, I had the opportunity to discuss the same with Lieutenant General Shivani. And he also brought this fact that you have highlighted, the training factor.
Yeah.
Education, experience, and exposure will remain a very crucial factor to make sure that we stay updated. And very beautifully, you have given the four-tier approach.
Yeah.
So I hope the audience will benefit from it once they are able to hear this. And this will give me an opportunity to engage with you once more in future, in some time that we'll discuss on the same in detail.
Anytime.
Definitely, sir. Now we talk about satellite constellations as you discussed. And when it comes to space-based ISR, the satellites are, like backbone. Recently, there is this shift. What used to happen is first the countries previously they used to focus on these large satellites, which were exquisite and exclusive for such one particular function. But now what's happening is they are using more number of satellites which are smaller in size. So instead of a bigger satellite, they are going for a constellation one. So they have this advantage that just in case in times of conflict and all, if a bigger satellite gets hampered, the entire architecture might fail. But now with these distributed satellite constellations, even if one or two satellites are managed to be damaged, the overall architecture might not suffer as much as it would used to be. So how do you think that India should move forward with these architecture so that the damages are minimal and we don't rely on one big or few big exclusive satellites because the warfare is changing every day. So we'll have to upgrade ourselves. So what do you think? What do you give like suggestion? What do you suggest how we should move towards this?
Yeah, when I very pertinent question actually you asked. Your question is whether you should go for distributed constellation of smaller satellites or exquisite satellites which are big and very capable. So this debate not only related to satellites. If you remember, F-35 news came that Iran war F-35 got shot down, and this debate started again. When the smaller drones can do the job, why are you putting such a costly and high technology F-35 into harm's way? Similar, the debate goes on in maritime domain. Do we need aircraft carriers when we have smaller unmanned platforms now over the sea, under the sea? Why do we need big aircraft carriers? So this debate is, overflowing from these aspects also. So what is happening in Vinayak is now there are three things which robotics, miniaturization, and computing power. So what is happening is robotics is advancing. It is being miniaturized. People are making fly or mosquito size drones, and the computing power is compressed, and the small microchip has got so much of computing power. So these three things combined, what is happening is ideal for air warfare, you can say air and space warfare, because you want systems which are lighter, which are smaller, and which are much more capable while they are being light and small. And that is the ideal situation for satellites, for space warfare, for air warfare. So now there are era of anti-satellite weapons. The space is being weaponized. So a lot of countries have, even India has demonstrated its anti-satellite capability in 2019, if I remember correctly.
Yes, yes.
So what happens is the high-level satellites will become, they have certain amount of vulnerability. Vulnerability in the sense, financially they are costly. If it is knocked off, technically, in case they are knocked off, damage will be much more. Your system will get affected. Strategically, it will be disaster. So on the other hand, distributed constellation, if you have constellation of small satellites, and now the networking has advanced so much, the communications have advanced so much that all these constellations, they work like a composite unit, like we call swarm warfare.
Yes,
Smaller, this thing they're working in unison. In the aerial warfare, the loyal wingman concept, that means drones are operating with a manned aircraft. It's something like that. So it is better. It is much more advantageous to have a distributed constellation. as compared to this thing. Principle is, like, don't put all your eggs in one basket and make it more difficult for the enemy, create more targets for him in case required. Plus, it gives you redundancy. Even if you get knocked off, the others will take on the job. That is the whole concept at the moment. Now, so what it means is that satellite resilience and redundancy means availability of satellites even if you get knocked off, and redundancy is a central priority in the space warfare and the space deterrent doctrine. Now, everything is not honky-dory with the distributed constellation also. Even if there are certain drawbacks also. If you have small satellites, the payload will be small. Your resolution will be smaller. You can't put high resolution sensors on it. Your bandwidth will get limited. Your coverage will get limited. Correct? It'll be good for tactical ISR, but if you want a long area coverage, then you need a bigger satellite or bigger sensors. So those drawbacks are there. But those drawbacks, if you do a cost-benefit analysis, the drawbacks get mitigated by the advantages. But having said that, the solution lies in not this or this. It is this and this. That means sort of a tiered approach and a tiered architecture where both of them, combination of both of them are there. So what you have is combination of smaller satellites of high capability along with a small number of high capability strategic big satellites. Along with them, a large constellation of capable and expendable smaller satellites. Third is, the concept of these stratospheric airships is coming up. HAPS, which they call it. That means high altitude platform systems. Even India has shown interest, and some sort of demonstration has been done. So these are solar powered platforms. They are unmanned. They can fly up to 18 to 20 kilometers height. They can remain airborne for weeks. And so the combination of these along with the constellation of satellites, smaller ones and the bigger ones, will be an ideal solution. So India is looking at HAPS, as well as India is also looking at constellation of satellites. We have a SBS program, that is space-based surveillance, SBS 1, 2, and 3. Now we are in the phase 3. And this is almost 25 years long program. SBS 1 started in 2001, 2 started in 13, and 3 is now going on, started in 2024. And 3, what is envisaged is a constellation of 52 satellites. Okay, out of which 21 will be made by ISRO and 31 will be made by the private industry. So private players also come into this. And these 52 satellites will be advanced satellites. They will be small satellites with capability, constellation. And not only that, the whole project is being envisaged that by April 26, the first satellite will be launched. So we are waiting eagerly for the news or an update on the whole program. And by 2029 is the completion when all the 52 satellites will be in service. So we are eagerly waiting for news on what is the progress of this. And these satellites will be AI driven. They'll be all weather, day and night capable, good inter-satellite communication system. They'll be able to track naval vessels over the sea as well as in the air, subsurface submarines. So the capabilities which are envisaged in these satellites are quite good. And also it is being said that, our project of Sudarshan Chakra, like Iron Dome of Israel and others, which we have envisaged, which Prime Minister announced. So this SBS program, these satellites will be linked to Sudarshan Chakra also. So the whole concept is very, very modern and in tune with the contemporary warfare. The only thing is, are we able to deliver? So if we are able to deliver, I think Indian approach is quite good. And the way I have suggested, that tiered approach of combination of all three. So if it works out, it will be really good for the Indian space-based surveillance.
Yes, sir. I totally agree on your point of distributed usage. You also managed to put out the distribution in terms of public and private as well. Yeah. Just not the satellite aspect, but the private players are also being encouraged, as you mentioned in the SBS 3. 31 of the total 52 satellites are being given to the private players. And yes, you rightfully brought out that robotics, miniaturization, and this computing power has, in a way, democratized orbit warfare, if I can say. And yes, the audience would will also be very likely to dwell more into this, the advantages and disadvantage comparison between small sized satellites and big satellites, as you mentioned. If one is working fine, then the other has some drawbacks, as you mentioned, the latency issue, the broadband issue, the coverage issue. So yes, I agree with you that we should go for a hybrid approach where we don't put all our eggs in one basket. Sir, following to this, like it can be very easily said that data is like the new fuel in the modern warfare. And during the conflict times also, we get data from multiple modes, be it from sensors, be it from space-based surveillances, be it from ground sensors. But what happens is, or what is, in the discussion is, there is this lack of communication or coordination between the different agencies that cover different modes of data. What the satellite can capture might not be effectively captured by the ground-based sensors, or what ground-based sensor can catch might not be exactly, the cup of tea of satellite to catch. So how do you think that we can move towards a more command approach, like a unified command approach, to bring about a synergy in various agencies that are involved in this data collection? Because what I believe is, more the sources of data, more scattered the data is, it becomes sometimes contradictory. Like one data might contradict the other data. So we need this some command-based approach, like unified command-based approach to analyze the data we receive. So what are your views on that, sir?
Yeah, and very, very important questions once again. Actually, all these questions which you're bringing out there, is evolved over the time and it has progressed along with the warfare, along with the technology. But now it has taken a new, it needs a new approach because of the expansion of the whole envelope of the warfare. And you are rightly spread out. The more number of sensor doesn't mean clarity. It
Yes,
means also confusion unless you integrate them. So more numbers with integration will bring you clarity, but without integration, it will give you confusion. Okay, having said that, so what is happening is, it's not only the data received from the sensors in the space domain. Space domain is one of them. Now we need to actually, you have talked about how do we fuse the space assets and create a common picture. Actually, it is not only, it's a much bigger issue. It's a question of intelligence. It is a question of gathering inputs. Like China, I'll give you an example. China put during the reorganization, they put all the 4 domains, new domains, under one service. They created a new service that is a cyber, space, electronic, and information warfare. These are the futures of warfare and non-kinetic, which we talked about, and both offensive and defensive capability. But later on, they found that they made up too big a giant because 4 domains were difficult to, and they are all interlinked. The idea was very good, but after 10 years of trying, then reverted back to American model where they each became a vertical in itself. Okay, so having said that, now what happens is there are sensors which are multi-domain. When I say multi-domain, you have radio frequency, you have optical, you have cyber, you have electronic, you have second, human. I mean, various types of inputs are coming in. Then there are multiple domains in the sense they are land-based, they are airborne, they are space-based. So sensors are many, and they're picking up information, data from various domains and various methods, various operating in various places. So idea is to analyze the data, convert it into actionable intelligence, and disseminate on need-to-know basis. Very simply put, but very not so easy to execute. So technology, as I said, again, I'm repeating, technology is far ahead of our requirements. I mean, it can give you data collection at a very fast, rapid rate. AI-based, it can, analyze the data very fast. And with machine learning, you can tune it to what you want. The data distribution systems have become very fast. The problem is, how do we absorb this technology? How do we use it as a force multiplier? It is an organizational and doctrinal issue. That means organizational adaptation and doctrinal architecture to absorb. So you need data collection, you have AI-based analysis, then you need to filter the distribution, then you need to make sure that the raw as well as the processed data both are available live in real time as well as archived. Both can be used. Then you have to prevent data overload. The people should get the data only need to know basis. The push-pull model should be there, that you're pushing in information and you're pulling information when required. Then you need to have a common operative picture between the two. Then the update rate has to be current, very fast. So all these things, what I mentioned about 8, 9 things, the architecture has to be evolved. The doctrine has to be evolved by the organization to absorb this technology and use it as a first multiplier. Okay. So how do we go about it? First step is we need compatibility. You've got many stakeholders, correct? So their data protocols, their standards, their communication protocols have to be in tune with each other so that they can talk to each other, they can shake hands with each other, they can communicate with each other, they can share data with each other. That is very, very important. If you have different protocols, different systems, the handshake will not happen, correct? The second is, as I covered, the data collection, analysis, storage. Storage is also very important, and thereafter the flow, which I talked about in detail. The third is organizational once again. Now, to my mind, 2, 3 things need to be done. One is a joint space and intelligence fusion center. So as I said, whatever I said so far is what I'm getting at is the space segment of the data collection and analysis and deriving intelligence out of it, and the intelligence network which we have, they need to be fused. To fuse that, you need to have some organization, maybe a joint space and fusion center. We need to establish that. Second is, military wise, we need to have 3, Navy, Air Force has got, space programs and various things. We need to have a command, space command. All the major powers, if you see, US, Russia, China, they have got a command. We are still in phase 2. We still have only Defense Space Agency. Actually, I was a wing commander when this whole process was initiated and suggested that we do it in 3 phases. First phase within in-house, second phase tri-service, and third phase full-fledged command. We have still not reached the full-fledged command stage. I think if we do that militarily, the space users will get a lot of boost. The third is, I think at national level, whatever name you want to give it, you can call it National Aerospace Command, or worse, I'm not getting into semantics. The idea is that organization is not only military, it is coordinating between all the stakeholders. That means your military, ISRO, NTRO, intelligencies. So that sort of and it should have a authority to decide on various matters and execute it. So I think if we have this institutional or organizational absorption by making these some structures, these are very, very nascent stage. I just mentioned the names. We don't have to go into semantics, but we can work on the charter of these institutions, and I think it will the absorption of the space-based assets along amalgamation with the intelligencies and getting a clearer picture, availability to everyone will improve in case we do these steps. Yeah.
Definitely, sir. I agree with you. And on your suggestion to establish joint space and data fusion center, that's a wonderful initiative if taken and if implemented sooner. And you talked about space command, and I'm happy to share to our audience that on the same line, if I may say, CENJOWS also has established a space cell that focuses on happenings in space. And very coincidentally, the theme of our this current upcoming synergy is also on near space. So that is something I would like to know, let the audience know through this podcast. And yes, sir, you mentioned about multi-stakeholders as well. Yes, there is a need to bring all the stakeholders who are involved under one platform and hold discussions and get to know what is the shortcomings, what are the areas that we have improved, and what are the areas we need to improve. And this discussion is the need of the hour, as you have rightly brought out. Sir, so my last question, because of the paucity of time, like when somebody hears about space, they think that, okay, space is too far. Like there is a big distance between us and space. Like even the common line, what we speak about, where the space begins, it's like 100 kilometers. So what they normally like, there is this feeling amongst the common citizens who are not in the battle involved, involved in the front line themselves. They think that space is something that should be managed from distance apart. But what I feel is a commander who is at the front line should be able to handle it from where he is operating. Like, if, for example, if I should say, we should be able to launch satellites or launch some missiles or something, anti-satellite weapons on demand. But right now, I don't know whether we do possess such capability for on-demand launches. So, like, do you see a future where India will reach a position where we have this task-based launches? And if yes, then what would your recommendations be, like how to approach that stage where we reach, like when we say, yeah, we need a missile to be launched, and this particular satellite seems to be of some adversary and we need to take care of it. So we need an immediate launch. So do you think there is a possibility that we reach that stage any soon?
Definitely. But very interesting statement you made in the beginning. And actually, this mindset needs to be changed, and not only in civilians. It is in the mindset of people who orchestrate warfare also. The feeling is there that space is a static domain. It's a standalone domain. It is a strategic asset, and it is far away. So that mindset needs to be changed to key space is a fluid and very, very capable, and it needs to be integrated in the whole dynamics of warfare. Unless this mindset change takes place, things will not move as fast as they should be. Very important thing you brought out. Okay, launch timelines, we talk about weeks and months. Actually, it should be hours. That is the need. If we are getting into spacewalk, and the time it will come, come. Now, how fast or how slow it comes, that is the question. Uh, we need to develop our launch capability uh, to launch satellites on demand, as you said, or as and when required, and not only from one location, from multiple locations. The reason is these days, the targeting has become so offensive, and with standoff weapons and with precision. If you have only one facility, it can be neutralized. Even underground facilities are not safe anymore with the hypersonics and the kind of penetration weapons which are coming in. So you need to have multiple facilities. Okay, it should have adequate protection. Okay, and even I would say if we can have a mobile sort of a launch capability, that will be ideal. Where you can move and hide and shoot and scoot or whatever the term you want to use. So these are thought processes which come to mind to develop these capabilities. As far as approach is concerned, how to go about it, I always have these 2-point, 3-point formula for everything and to channelize the thoughts. So here also I have a three-way approach. So one is, you have small launch vehicles. That means ability to launch small satellites, like we have SSLV. Okay, that is a ideal example for this capability. And it should have a quick turnaround time. That means should be able to assemble and quickly launch this thing. It should not take too long. That is obviously, that means it should be able to launch smaller satellites, and it should be able to do it quickly. And private industry role is very, very important. We have already covered earlier also in this whole gap. The second is, you need to have ready-made satellites available. Now, when I say ready-made satellites, a sort of a generic satellite which are pre-integrated already, and they have a modular concept of payload. That means tomorrow you need something with SAR, so you put SAR to live, or you need optical payload, or you need electronic warfare EW payload, or you need communication payload. So it should be modular in concept. That means it is a sort of a satellite which you can accept. So that concept needs to be brought in. That will help in the modern warfare and this thing. Third is very important. You need to have search capability. Okay, and search capability is it encompasses everything what we talked about. That means availability of number of satellites, ability to launch, ability to multiple places to launch. That means if the war breaks out or if there is a requirement, you will be able to launch satellites quickly at a very fast rate. So whatever we covered so far, it should be there. So these are the things. Now, as far as the timelines are concerned, so short term is, short term solution is whatever satellites we have at the moment and whatever satellites we're launching in near future, they should be able to, dynamically reprogrammable. That means I should be able to control them to, although certain amount of controllability is there. Like tomorrow, if I want coverage of a particular area, or I want higher resolution, or I want higher time over the target, so we should be able to maneuver. We should make it more and more. And in the long term, of course, we should have satellite on demand. And what is being talked about in various forums is, talking about 24 hours to 72 hours, that is 1 day to 3 days or 4 days. But the idea is, as the technology is evolving, as the capabilities are increasing, this time should be reduced progressively. Okay. Now, SSLV, as it is a good example, small satellite launch vehicle which we have, which ISRO has got, and this should be privatized. Unless you privatize, you will not. I mean, the technology should be shared with the private sector. Otherwise, you will not be able to have those surge operation which I talked about earlier. And this SSLV is capable of launching up to 500 kg satellites, I think up to 500 low Earth orbits, and it's got low cost, it is quick reaction, it's got needs minimum infrastructure. So it is ideal platform for launch on demand, and we are on track as far as this is concerned. All we need is a institutional perseverance to take it through to capability of launch on demand. But we are not close at the moment. We are still far out. A lot needs to be done as far as this capability is concerned. I think SBS 3, when the constellation comes in, I think SBS 4, the draft must have already been being made. I'm sure SBS 4 will include this capability, hopefully.
Definitely, sir. Yeah. All we can do is hope for. And yes, sir, like very interesting thing that you have brought out was the moving launch vehicle.
Yeah.
Recently, I was also studying about the sea launch based ones, where the more closer we move towards equator, the more payload we are able to carry, and it also eliminates the civilian risks and all. So I hope the stakeholders who are involved in these design and manifestations will come together and make that into a reality, because we have this advantage of being very closer to equator, and we have the whole Indian Ocean where the gravity is, I think, one of the lowest gravitational points on Earth is in the Indian Ocean. So we have that advantage to us. So I hope that dream comes into reality soon. We will have a good and a very enhanced sea-based launcher where demand-based launches can happen. And you mentioned about SSLV. Yes, I totally agree with you. And ISRO has lots of plans for enhancing SSLV, as well as NGLV is also on the line. And as far as I have read, there is this project called Project Veda that the DSA has, it's in the progress. I don't know what is the latest status on that, but yes, I think that also would be of a great help to enhance our launch facilities. So having said this, I once again formally thank you for being with us and for giving such insightful I learned so many new things today, and I hope when our audience watches this, they also will get enriched by your thoughts, your 3-step, 4-step formulas, as you have mentioned. And I hope to engage with you soon so that we discuss more on those specific, tire structures that you have suggested. And yes, sir, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you, Vinay. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, sir. And this episode will be on all our social media platforms. And we'll see you all in another episode. Thank you.